Hello! How are you doing? Hey! This is the video on the true nature of the atom. I have the link below in a PDF, also too on the Substack. However, all the diagrams don't fit in on the Substack. For some reason, Substack doesn't like it when you include a bunch of different pictures. It's mainly meant for text. You can include quite a few, but PDF link is below in the description on the true nature of the atom, and also too in a pinned comment. Before starting this video on the true nature of the atom, I found somebody that didn't know what they had. And I got it in today, and I've been checking it out in a different color variation, and this seems odd, but you could verify that. In a different color variation, the same pack, this is the Lamborghini of packs used by Special Forces and Delta Force and Navy SEALs, is sometimes upwards of 8 Gs. This itself, as it sits, is a 1K pack. I didn't pay anything close for that. But it's made in the USA. They don't make them like this anymore, even though the company still exists. It's called Mystery Ranch. Mystery Ranch, made in Montana, is the Lamborghini, the like top Lamborghini of, I have a thing for packs. So there's absolutely nothing finer on this earth that exists other than one made for Special Forces, made by Mystery Ranch. And man, I got it stuffed full of towels. I know it's probably not very impressive to you, but I paid less than $2.50 for this pack, and it's pretty minty. It's like mint plus. But as it sits, it's worth 1K. I've always wanted one of these. I've got a Mystery Ranch pack, but not in a rare camo pattern like that. I'm sorry if that's not too interesting. I got a thing for, and I make bags too out of leather. I want to get into it, and the article that I wrote turned out to be a little bit longer than I thought. I was planning on 10 pages, but it ended up being, with several diagrams that I created, right at 14 pages. But I made it really simple. You know, there's only like 2 or 3 words that a person might have to look up, but I've kept it really simple because Mother Nature itself, she is very simple. And these Saturnian and cloud models of the atoms, and and nobody cares about the old history. You know, they first started out with this, BB idea of an atom, and then you had this this plum pudding, literally, idea that were like the pudding was the nucleus, and the plums throughout the pudding were the electrons. It's literally, it's a plum pudding, a model of, and then we get into Bohr, and we still have this cloud model of the atom, but nothing ever fit. I'm going to keep the atom very simple, and it also too explains all observed phenomena. It explains sugar and all atoms, being agitated in your microwave, to MRIs, to particle accelerators, atomic bonding, radius, nuclear cascade reactions. Also, too, it explains alpha, of course, is just helium nuclei. It explains alpha, beta, and gamma. I mean, the center has to hold with something. And there's only so much I could stick in this 20-plus minute video, but I'm going to hit the highlights, or most of the highlights. But once again, the article's below. By the way, I greatly appreciate any donation. I proofread this many times, and it's the culmination of quite a bit of work. I could have done this article years ago. It's not like all of a sudden it came into my head, the nature of the atom, but a lot of people have been asking me to do it, and this sums it up precisely. Of course, an atom is a circular frequency, non-propagating energy dynamo, which sounds complicated, but it's not. I've said a million times, and it seems like as many videos, and certainly so live streams, that there is a hysteresis barrier, which is the rate of induction at which a disturbance can occur, in this case light. I've kind of humorously, of course, called the hydrogen atom a hard light, and its propagation barrier. Nikola Tesla referred to it as the ratio between elasticity and density of a medium. These are 2 quotes, one from Walter Russell, I have a great deal of appreciation for, and he himself got quite close to the atom. He still missed quite a few things, but this is from Walter Russell. There are no nucleal particles at atom centers. In fact, there are only holes there, like in the eye of a cyclone. Nikola Tesla quote here, "That which we call matter is merely vortices or whirlpools of the ether." He used the word "in the ether," but that implies there's something and something else. That specificity is very important. You can't say in the ether, because then someone thinks something is in the ether. Rather, of the ether itself, and so that minor nuance is incredibly important. What we call, and so by the way, I'm going to completely take down the neutron, and this, my article on the neutron, it's lower in the article, is absolutely no different than any other branch of science, and that we're full agreement. All free neutrons actually spontaneously become protons after they agree upon 15 minutes. It's called neutron decay, and they all agree upon it. So all free neutrons become protons freed from the nucleus. And this means, of course, the neutron is a phase modality of a proton. It's no different than saying ice is a cold modality of water. And we can't think, well, we got water over here and ice over here to simplify things. Neither is there any such thing as a proton versus a neutron. By the way, every expert, let's dispel the electron too, by the way. And that's not me saying, let's get rid of the electron. I've debated some of the supposed finest minds on Earth about the electron. They think it's particles traveling through wires. And of course, they can never explain wireless power induction or instantaneous action at a distance that way. But all the gods of field theory, Dollard, Tesla, Steinmetz, Heaviside, James Clerk, they all said there's such a thing as an electron particle. Even the discoverer of the principle of the same, J.J. Thomson, referred to the concept of the electron, and there's no such thing as an electron particle. That's not me saying that, as one unit of dielectric induction. Electrons is a separate, discrete entity, doesn't really exist. These are merely bumps in something we call the field. That's Dr. Stephen Biller. This is Nikola Tesla on SAM. And the subject matter, this is a 1928 interview with Tesla. Tesla holds views that are strangely original, startlingly original, which they're actually not original. It's just what the commentator said. He disagreed with the accepted atomic theory of matter and doesn't believe in the existence of an electron as pictured by modern-day science. This is Tesla saying, "This account for its apparent small mass. Science conceives the electron as a hollow sphere, a sort of bubble." You could actually read that in the article below, and he actually gets quite wordy on this. I'm going to try to make it really short and simple. "My ideas regarding the electron are variants with those generally entertained. I hold it as a relatively large entity carrying a surface charge and is not an elementary unit or particle. When the electron, concept thereof, leaves an electrode at high potential and high vacuum, and it carries an electrostatic charge many times greater than that. It's just one unit of dielectric induction," which the person that got most accurate on that was J.J. Thomson. This is Walter Russell, by the way. "Describe an electron as a negatively charged body is equivalent to saying that it is an expanding, contracting particle. There's no such condition in nature as a negative charge." What he's actually trying to say is that it's a discharge or ground. That's like saying that the grounding rod outside my house here for grounding my electronics equipment, communication equipment, is a cathode. It's a ground. It's a discharge node. The same is true of an atom. The assumed electron cloud, which is purely conceptual, it has absolutely no observational fact whatsoever, is a cathode. And of course the nucleus collectively is an anode. Every atom is nothing other than an electrostatic dynamo. Anyway, there's a bunch of quotes, many from Eric Dollard, Walter Russell, and others regarding the non-existence of the electron. And since all free neutrons, and this is not me saying it, full agreement with every branch of science, spontaneously becomes a proton, this means there's only one fundamental particle. Also, too, the galactic jets, which also go by the name astrophysical jets, are creating and emitting out, and there's many genuine pictures of same. These are not NASA-created fantasies. Trillions and trillions and trillions of tons of super high-energy light, specifically hydrogen. All branches of science agree on this as well. Of course, we have the nuclear compounding in our stellar furnaces, where we actually go from hydrogen to hydrogen isotopes and on to helium and so on and so forth. So every atom, whether it be gold or silver or anything, is compounded hydrogen. the fundamental super high energy, super high capacitance, and I have a formula for that. It's at the very bottom here, which is my discovery I made a few years ago. If you want the math, I got the math for you at the bottom of this 14-page article there, where we actually reach a capacitance barrier where light no longer propagates. Light, once again, over and over again, as I've said a million times, and Tesla agrees with this. Tesla said his light is nothing other than a sound wave of the ether. Well, sound is not an emission either. It's a disturbance of a medium. Light is not an emission. Light doesn't travel. It doesn't have a speed. The assumed speed of light, or what we call C, is the hysteresis, or the ratio between elasticity or density of the medium. That's the rate of induction at which something can occur. It is the literal speed limit at which a disturbance with a transverse phenomena, in this case the blinking electromagnetic frequency or wavelength of light, can no longer occur. This is a propagation barrier. That propagation barrier, which exists several magnitudes above that of gamma radiation, is what we call hydrogen. And all atoms are compounded hydrogen. This makes nature really, really simple. This curvilinear force cloud of the magnetic field in the images below in the article that you could download in PDF form is wrongly assumed to be the electron cloud of an atom. A magnet, of course, is identical in its field mechanics to any and all atoms. The magnetic field around and outside the physical magnet, or the atomic nucleus, is the sphere of interaction in the magnet and the atom, and of course in molecular interactions, chemical bonding, all observed phenomena of atoms. There are no electrons spinning around a nucleus any more than there's something spinning around the outside of a magnet. And yet, of course, the charge exists there. I mean, every AC motor, whether it be 2 or 4 or however many phase the AC generator is, you can say AC motor, AC generator, you know, it's about the field. And this, of course, is the change of the magnetic field with respect to time generates power. But there's nothing outside of the magnet. That is literally the ether itself. All atoms are just little electrostatic dynamos. What we call in simple, then, the proton, which is only one fundamental particle. And by the way, people say, what about particle accelerators? What are they doing there? Well, they are smashing at ultra-high speed helium nuclei. And then there's a digital imaging of the impact of those helium nuclei where they actually have countless different energy vectors, and they'll conceptualize and fantasize, oh, look at that. There's that imaginary particle we were looking for. You see how it kind of makes a curly Q on the energy tracking imager? Very, very expensive. I'd love to get my hands on one. I hear they're many tens of millions of dollars, the actual imagers for the particle accelerator. But they are colliding helium nuclei. But they're looking at the high-speed collisions of the helium nuclei, and they're dreaming up new imaginary. Well, we've seen that before a million times. We're going to see if we can make it go a little faster with a little bit. See, we're going to find it eventually. Eventually, they're looking for the magical spin, or I don't want to get into the particle accelerators, but all atomic phenomena are explained in simple. The convolution of the Bohr model, the de Broglie model, the Schrödinger model, the Saturnian model, we still suffer this idea that there are these little electron beads like a necklace that are spinning around a nucleus, and that's just patently absurd. Now, the principle of the electron, of course, does exist, but it's not a particle. It's one unit of dielectric induction. It's a reference to an energy. But, of course, these people being atomists, they think everything is a particle. To a hammer, everything's a nail. To an atomist, everything's a particle. They came up with the photon particle. They came up with the electron particle. These things don't exist. Why did we call it a neutron? Why wouldn't we accurately, if we were more of an advanced species, say that the neutron is a phase modality proton? Fall free neutrons spontaneously, without any interference, spontaneously become protons, and a neutron is a proton. That's undeniable. What human beings call c, or the speed of light, is the hysteresis of the ether, maximum rate of induction of the creation of light, which of course is a compounded energy circuit. So nature's smallest dynamo, the proton, just like a magnet, has its own very field outside of which is identical to any and every magnet. This, of course, is incommensurability. It's holographic self-similarity as well. Also, too, and this is a finer nuance, but it's also, too, really simple. that just like a magnet, these atoms, of which there are basically three classes in the periodic table, we actually have small mass, low Gauss, like helium or boron. We have small mass, high Gauss, like hydrogen or sodium or potassium. We have large mass, low Gauss, like silver, gold, mercury, etc. And then we have large mass, high Gauss, like uranium, plutonium, etc. The higher the Gauss, just like a magnet, which operates identically as does any and every atom, has a huge black hole at the center. And a hole of what? Same as you see underneath every 1,000-plus supercell video that I've actually made. And of course, a smaller magnetic dynamo shell around the same. The danger comes from high Gauss, high nuclear mass atoms such as radon, uranium, neptunium, plutonium, and so forth. Their nuclear kinetic potential is very powerful, and their Gaussian fields, however, are very weak. It's kind of akin to a pack of ravenous tigers being held back by a paper cage. This is what atoms like uranium, isotopes, and some of them are stable. They're still ultimately not stable. Did you know all lead is depleted uranium? Radon, plutonium, all the rest of these things are high nucleokinetic capacitance, but low Gaussian field. Once again, all observed phenomena. The parameters with gradients, and this classifies all atoms and the gradients between same, no different than magnets and their fields, is low capacitance and high mass, high capacitance and low mass, high mass and stable capacitance like silver, gold, mercury, and then high mass, high capacitance, such as these unstable elements. I made the accurate prediction over 5 years ago that they would discover high capacitance light, which would cause the formation of matter. And lo and behold, about 2 years ago, actually less, was discovered from constructive interference as opposed to destructive interference from two high powerful lasers which did exactly that. Nature, of course, does this in another way. We call these astrophysical jets or galactic jets, emitting out trillions of tons of hydrogen. And of course, these are compounded in stellar furnaces to get helium and the rest. These black holes, of course, are not actually holes. They act like galactic-size protons, whose capacitance is so utterly high that they generate light many, many magnitudes above that of normal light. And of course, super high capacitance light is gamma radiation. There is a reason, by the way, a super simple explanation to fit with Occam's razor and the accurate model of the atom, which I've called it the magnetoatomic model of the atom, why gamma is so dangerous. It acts like quasi-matter. I mean, it is light, undeniably. We call it radiation, but why is gamma so dangerous? Its frequency is so high, it's very, very close to actual matter itself, that it acts like matter. It acts like quasi-matter, even though there's light. That's why gamma radiation is so dangerous. I mean, that is so simple that even a little person could understand. It's like, little Johnny, when the frequency is so high, the capacitance then is also too high. And so we then have this dangerous light that basically passes through almost everything. And it acts almost as if it were matter, even though it's not. And little Billy would say, well, if that's the case, then several magnitudes above gamma, we must have matter itself, where no more propagation can occur. That's right. You figured it out. It's that simple. Mother Nature, the hairy pit chick that keeps things super simple. And there is nothing more simple than that. By the way, I have a lot of diagrams and pictures to help explain this in the article below. The ratio between elasticity and density of this ether, of course, is that speed limit, and this is where propagation no longer occurs. Ultimately, instead of talking about the countless compounded atoms, which are all easily explained the same way you would explain large mass, high capacitance, or large mass, low capacitance, i.e. Gaussian field flux. And by the way, some of the monster magnets that are really powerful, of which I've had my hands on more than a few times, they actually are so massive and so powerful that they de-Gauss themselves. They start forming in each pole a new, they're literally trying to tear themselves apart. They can't, since they're held together and baked, since they're ceramic, like in the case of samarium cobalt or neodymium iron boron. Some of these 12-inch by 2-inch neodymiums, which are really quite expensive, by the way, are trying to tear themselves apart. It's no different than the perfect analog for that in the case of uranium or plutonium or radon. But we don't need to talk about all the other compounded atoms. We only need to talk about the base foundation, which is hydrogen. talking about non-propagation capacitance threshold light. As I've humorously called it, hard light, which I think is kind of funny. Maybe it's dry humor. Free neutron decay. Once again, all free neutrons spontaneously decay into protons with a mean lifetime of about 15 minutes. That's not me saying that. I mean, that's a fact. So we've eliminated out the electron. We've eliminated out the idea of a neutron, which is just a proton modality. We've made the atom very simple. All atoms are compounded hydrogen. And the fundamental atom of the universe is hydrogen. But what is hydrogen? Threshold capacitance light, several magnitudes above that. And I've got the equation, by the way, in the bottom of the article showing you where that threshold is. I forget how many electrovolts it is. Is it 15.9 electrovolts? I've forgotten, but I have it below, and that was my discovery from a few years ago, with the equations for same at the bottom of the 14-page article. You'll find it at the very, very last there. So an atom is a circular frequency non-propagating energy dynamo. That sounds like a mouthful, but it's not. It's no different than Mother Nature saying, you've got a speed limit here of capacitance, propagation can no longer occur, and what we have now is circular frequency. The circular frequency is what we call the proton. Well, the proton itself is a dynamo. So, well, that's the proton. What about the atom? Well, that proton itself, being a dynamo, generates its own little bubble of influence. This is nature's dynamo. We humans have our own AC generators and arch forms for power. Well, that's Mother Nature's. We got propagation threshold light, which is a proton, and it, by default, by definition, due to its attributional state, does generate the interatomic radius measured in picometers that we call the atomic radius, or the region of influence of any and all atoms, including hydrogen and all of hydrogen's isotopes and every isotope. Doesn't that make it simple? You could teach somebody in less than an hour what fundamentally an atom is. We've dismissed electrons, we've dismissed neutrons, logically and rationally so. We boiled everything down to Occam's razor. Simplicity explains all observed phenomena of atomic interaction, chemical bonding, MRI, on and on and on. Yeah, small mass, low Gauss, small mass, high Gauss. There's 4 modalities and all gradation in between. Their nucleokinetic potential is very powerful, and of course their Gaussian fields are very weak on some of these atoms, which is why they don't last very long. It's kind of like somebody that lives fast and loud and dangerously. They're not around for very long. It's like that old saying, there's old riders and bold riders, but there's no such thing as an old, bold rider, meaning a motorcycle rider. I used to ride motorcycles ages ago. That prediction I made many years ago proved to be true. I'd say constructive interference from high powerful lasers would produce matter, and of course it does. These galactic jets from black holes in the centers of galaxies are belching out trillions of tons of hydrogen. But instead of saying hydrogen, we need only say ultra-high capacitance light. This ratio between that elasticity and density, of course, is the speed limit. An atom is just an ether condensate phenomena. It has a spherical frequency of UHE, or ultra-high energy. Atoms are just ice nodules floating in the eternity of the ether medium. All matter, of course, are transient phenomena, either compounded, whether it be hydrogen or otherwise, or even uncompounded. In the case of hydrogen, a sea of inertia, of pure potential. What the atom is abundantly simple. The people that have complicated it are those that want to hold on to their powers in academia. They'll write a bunch of books. Well, yeah, you have to have a postgraduate degree to read my books and understand the math. It's like, excuse me, sir, you've taken something that must be simple, and you've convoluted it. You've broken Occam's razor. You've taken nature itself and tried to break it in two in a bunch of little pieces, and you've complicated it. You've painted it, and you've earmarked it, and you say, well, you can't understand this unless you attend my college courses and buy my book. This is the paradigm of the dog in the manger. Don't know if you're familiar with those. You can't enter in here regarding these secrets. We've made them complicated, and not only are they complicated, you have to bow before us, and you have to pay the way, and we could teach you about this and get yourself a 4-year degree. Even then you won't get it. Anyway, I go all over all the minutiae and the history and the fundamental simplex mechanics of what the atom is in the article below. I hope you appreciate it. I'll have it up on Substack, but I already have the PDF uploaded, and I'll have that link below. I hope you like these videos, and by the way, most importantly, there is nobody on this earth, whether they have a PhD, whether they drive a bus, there is nobody that can set foot against this article. I'm not that hubristically attached to it. I'm saying flat out, there's nobody that can refute it. It explains all observed phenomena of what the atom is. It is undeniable. It is as simple as it gets. I could actually simplify it without the diagrams and put it in about a half a page, but for sake of hitting every point so that somebody has clarity on what each point is, I made it 14 pages. Roughly half of that is text. The other half are diagrams so that people have visual aids. But this magnetoatomic model of the atom is simple. It does away with the electrons, it explains what neutrons are, and it makes things really simple. I hope you like this video, and I hope you like the article that I wrote for you. Any donation is always very greatly, warmly welcome. And I'm happy I wrote it for you. I proofread it a few times, but I read really quickly, so there still might be a typo in there or two. I'm sure someone will email me and point that out to me. Thank you so much for watching, and have a lovely week. Lux Veritas.